So the next step in conceiving this place was the question of how to craft it and what palette of materials would make it really feel part of Arkansas. And in some ways, my first thoughts were a white building, kind of pristine, white galleries, white ceilings, but something didn't quite feel right on this site. And I think it was just the fact that we were immersed in wood here, and maybe the fact that I visited all these Fay Jones structures, the church or the chapel that was all made of local wood, and your family house that was beautiful use of wood, that made me feel we must build this place out of wood. And wouldn't it be wonderful if that wood was Arkansas wood, like the pine, the Arkansas pine that's so plentiful here. And what would be the structural material that could support it growing out of the ground? Well, that could be concrete. And of course, as you mentioned, lining the concrete or banding it with wood tied the wood roof structures to the concrete earth structures. So out of the earth comes concrete, which is banded with wood, and then the structures above us are all made very contemporary, modern use of wood. I mean, surely this is not stick building. These are laminated wood beams made of many pieces of wood, glued together with epoxy, made into giant beams, supported and braced by steel cables, suspended over cables which are almost the scale of a suspension bridge. But all of that is made out of local wood and very sophisticated structure, but out of the old materials.
And one of the things, Moshe, that we're most proud about, and every time I give a tour of the building, I always talk about the fact that the RFP went out worldwide for these very complex beams, and yet it was one of our family-owned Arkansas companies that was chosen and delivered over 2,000 beams without a fault.
On schedule.
On schedule. And so it's so special to be able to utilize the craftsmen. And I guess one of the, this part of the world has a strong tradition of craftsmanship and artisanship. And the people that worked from this region on the building took just amazing pride in being able to work on this great project of yours and to be able to deliver it as a gift to their people.
We should mention the masons who came and did all the retaining walls with the rock and the paving and the landscape structures also, who really sort of meld this into the landscape around the building. I think we should talk about geometry, because people ask constantly, how did you come up with those shapes, the turtle shape, and they've got all kinds of...
The turtle, the half moon, the hog dog, the crescent, or the armadillo.
And I suppose people think geometry is something you just invent. You're a sculptor, you decide, I'm going to have a turtle building. But it's not quite that way. I think the geometry, which I'm passionate about in architecture, grows out of understanding of structure, the possibilities of the material. So first we decided we didn't want all rectangular galleries. It would be wonderful if some galleries had a sweeping curve to it. It actually represented the contours of the land. Like the Crescent building is actually fitting into the topography where the ravine is, just like following the natural contours to form a curve there. Having done that, and then developing a structure that's made up of vaults or concave invert vaults, the geometry evolves. I mean, if you take the curve of the catenary and you take the arches spanning across, and the catenary has the shape of an oval because it pulls out, you get the turtle shape. It's just inevitable. If you take the convex beam and you follow the curve of the land as we had, then you end up with a toroid. I mean, the surface of a donut. That's inevitable geometrically. Then you get the toroid and the double curvature vaults all interacting with each other like some kind of a composition. And I guess that's what composers did. At least I assume that's what composers do all the time. They put these certain themes together and structures together in music, and they get this sort of movement in a symphony. And I suppose we're doing the same here without realizing what we're doing.
And that's very interesting. You know, it was the workers on the job that came up with the turtle and the armadillo and the crescent and the hog ball and on, because these became almost living creatures. And the relationship between the craftsman and the building was a very personal relationship, as evidenced by those names.
I love those nicknames.
I continue to use them. I never could do building 5 and 6 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
I think the other thing is that we struggled with the fear of floods because we took the gamble of building in the drainage path. I remember discussions about should we be accommodating the 100-year flood. Then somebody said the 500-year flood. Then somebody says there's a lot of art in the building. It ended up being the 3,000-year flood, which I'm not sure quite what it means. But the fact is, we've had now extraordinary flows of water. The ponds behave like part of nature. They fill up, the water comes over gushing, it gets brown. 2 days later, the water settles, it becomes turquoise in color, just like nature. And so this has now become part of nature, and it's accommodating all the seasons and flow and rains and storms, and that's nice to see the building again part of nature.
You know, I remember we originally had pools, man-made pools, that the water, the creek underpassed in the spring went under the whole project. Right. And it was, I don't remember why we went to this. I think it was, we thought it was simpler and
to construct without having to deal with it. Right.
And we wanted a more natural feel, but it has really made the building truly a part of the landscape when the water continues to do naturally what it does. It gets muddy, it gets clear as a bell. You know, it goes to those shades in between like a half-inch rain does right now. And again, it's one of those decisions that has just helped in the organic feel of the building, which I think it's that organic feel that people so connect with about this building.